Hey, what's going on, fight fans? Hey, this is Coach D the Wild Man coming at you again with another episode of Coach D Media. Now, you know I do Coach D Media. I talk about all things combat sports related, from the highs to the lows. All right, let's go ahead and get back into it. Today, we're going to have a conversation about 2026 and what that means for combat sports across the board. Now, we all know a lot of things are starting to happen, right? We're getting back to sports being a focal point for a lot of people's interest, which means you're starting to see a lot of, major companies, broadcast rights, streaming rights, all this stuff paying a lot of attention to content distribution when it comes to combat sports. If you look at the UFC and Paramount with that $7.8 billion transition where UFC is now on Paramount, when you look at the scope of that, that's huge for fighting. When you look at it in that sense, somebody paid billions of dollars just to be able to have a sport that used to be considered human cockfighting now on a major production like Paramount, and they're willing to spend gobs of money to make it happen, right? So that just gives you the landscape that despite what we think about fighting, it matters to a lot of people that they want to spend so much money. I just saw a post for bare knuckle fighting where they had their last event had 2 million views or something along that line, side by side with the UFC in their first Paramount card that had 5 million views for the main event. Now, I don't know how true that is, but it's a good look when it comes to combat sports. Two sports that are considered very violent. Bare knuckle is considered violent. You don't got no pads, you don't got no gloves, you got a mano, skin on skin contact, bone on skin contact. With MMA, you can get choked out, knocked out, submitted, head kicked with a shin, all these things you can look at, but it's getting a lot of views and a lot of people are paying real attention and they're finding a way to capitalize on it, meaning they're making the shifts. Paramount's making the shift. Netflix is making the shift, right? Everybody is now getting into content distribution across the board. Netflix is buying podcast rights now, and they're streaming podcasts live on their platform. Digital is becoming a thing. You can't overlook it. It is what it is. So now we're going to talk about Fightnomics in 2026. When you look at where we're at today versus traditional. And I'm going to focus on 3 fighters. I'm going to focus on Colby Covington, Gable Steveson, and Bo Nichols. Not Bo Nichols, I'm sorry, Bo Bassett, right? And why I picked these 3 is because crucial things have happened with them when it comes to the end of 2025, into 2026, and where they're at in the combat sports arena, right? So I'm going to start with Colby Covington, right? Everybody has seen Colby Covington, right? He ran his mouth, huge Trump supporter, believes in disrupting, saying what he got to say to get what he got to get, a la Conor McGregor style. You know what I'm saying? He said, hey, he's ruined friendships. He's caused a whole bunch of problems, right? He's gotten into the right spots due to his mouth more than his skill. But in today's climate, does skill really matter? Is winning the only thing you need to get where you got to go? That's not necessarily true. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of great fighters out there and great wrestlers and great dirty boxers and great bare knuckle boxers. All these different combat sports that have great records, they are not getting top spots. meaning it has nothing to do with their skills. It has everything to do with their marketability, which is what we're getting at when it comes to the 2026 landscapes. Marketability is key to your success, to your making revenue success, not your success and accolades and your win-loss record. It's marketability towards how much money you can make in the sport and how it can change your life. If you want to make quote unquote the big bucks, you have to be marketable. You have to be able to sell yourself to a base to where they're interested in watching you on any promotional event like pay-per-view or Netflix or Paramount or whatever, right? You're willing to like, comment, and share and talk about that fighter and engage in conversations about that fighter or athlete, right? To where they trend because of your interest. So if you have no interest in what that athlete is doing, it doesn't matter what their record is. And that's why Colby Covington, it has been so successful to where his career was beginning to die down in the UFC. He wasn't fighting as much. He wasn't getting top spots. I'm not even sure if he was still in the rankings. I didn't check, but I wasn't 100% sure. Right? Then he gets the opportunity to wrestle Rockhold at an RAF event. I think it's RAF 5, maybe 5, right? And that process ended up being bigger for him on the media side and branding side and content distribution side than the actual match with Rockhold itself. He had a great press conference before the fight, right? Was able to get up there, run his mouth. Then Bo Nichols gets in on the mix that opens the door for Colby Covington to be himself, to where he literally, in my opinion, stole the show, to where it was all attention on Colby Covington. Now, Rockhold and him were the main event, so that gives you a certain degree of curiosity from the jump. Is why two MMA fighters were at the top of a quote unquote wrestling card, right? Is there because they're recognizable. They have history in the game. A lot of people are going to recognize them across the board, right? But what he did to Bo Nichols, right, in their back and forth, right, and then Bo Nichols dropped the ball by not wrestling at all. Didn't wrestle Romero because he missed weight. Didn't wrestle Pat Downey, right? Didn't do anything to help RAF succeed. Put a spotlight on Bo Nichols. And Colby Covington just ran with it. So after the event was over, in the final press conference, all the questions were for Colby Covington. Even though they had Kyle Dake on there as well, and Kyle Dake won his match against Kadik, which is a huge fight. Match in itself. Still, all of the attention was on Colby Covington because they wanted to hear what he has to say. That's marketability, right? All the media attention was on him because they knew they could run with what he says. It had nothing to do with how great the match was. And it was an okay match. It wasn't nothing to sneeze about, right? It wasn't nothing to brag about. It was okay, but it was like wow, freaking the fight of the night was Dake and Kadik. That was the fight that was the match of the night, but it didn't get the kind of press that Colby Covington did. So what does that tell you? Marketability is important. You can't dismiss it. It's the landscape we're in. Credibility and clout in the bank is what you can do to gain attention. Now, can it go left? Like a Conor McGregor, even Colby Covington, going too far with their mouth that they're burning a lot of bridges and causing a lot of damage that could get them effed up. A lot of people wanted to jump on Colby back in the day, just like Conor McGregor, for running their mouth too much. Okay? But we can't say it doesn't have its place, right? Especially in the landscape that we're in now, where you have to sell yourself. So that's why Kobe Covington is still relevant today, to where now he can cross over between two different major platforms. REF is growing on a huge level right now. They're doing great things. So to ignore what REF is doing and not, you can make a spotlight at REF just as much as you can in the UFC. Now the UFC is a harder road. Don't get me wrong, right? Because you got to get after it a lot more to REF. In the UFC to be recognized. You got to do a lot more work. But if you get there and you become recognized in the UFC, you've done something. It has nothing to do with your win-loss record. Just being clear, right? And look at all the platforms we have now for combat sports. Not only do we have boxing, which is trying to make a comeback through Dana White and the new Zuffa boxing, all that kind of good stuff, which I not sure where they're gonna go, but hey, as far as storylines go, hey, people are talking about it. He looks like he's backed by the Saudis, and it looks like he's stepping away from the UFC, meaning Dana White is stepping away from the UFC. He had to appear in court for, this freaking antitrust, whatever you want to call it, situations where he has to answer for some of these things that happened to these fighters who lost out tons of money that they should have gotten, right? So now he's stepping away. They're saying that he hasn't matched, did any matching in a while. He's pretty much hands off, right? He's more just of a figurehead. He's more of the face of UFC. He really doesn't have his hands on the pulse of anything. So now he can focus on some of these other ventures that he got going on, like Slap, now Zuffa boxing. So Dana White's gonna pretty much reinvent himself someplace else. He's not worrying about the UFC. The UFC is gonna be fine on its own. You know what I'm saying? That just shows you how the game is played. You get in, you get it to where it got to go, and then you go on to what's next. So, right, if it ain't boxing, if it ain't dirty boxing, if it ain't MMA, we got wrestling, making a stand in the pro ranks. All of it is based off marketability. Can you sell yourself? Now, let's talk about, Gable Stevenson, right? After he lost to Wyatt, in a major wrestling event that was considered the upset of the decade, that no one was expecting Gable to lose. He lost in the last seconds of a match, right? Wyatt became Captain America, the president sang him praises, yada, 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 right? But Gabe didn't fall to the wayside and decide to disappear, out of the sport, right? He was such a commodity, such a supreme athlete that he was able to go to football without ever putting on cleats, ever. He was such a superior talent that he didn't have to have a high school, background in football, nothing. They go, hey, we can teach you. Don't worry about it. Just show up on a major NFL team. What does that tell you? Right? Didn't work out. I think he had like 2 trials, right? Went to the WWE, had a trial there, right? One of them there because he was an Olympic gold medalist, which is a stamp to go anywhere. At least get a look. I mean, you can do it, but you're definitely going to get a look, right? That whole road that he took led him to MMA. Now LFA, you know what I'm saying? Did his daggone thing, won, right? I think he won twice at LFA, right? Proving that he can get it done. Won in dirty boxing, knockout. Proving that he can get it done. Now he's being looked at by the UFC. He's being trained by John Jones. He has branded himself away from wrestling by himself as a combat athlete, right? And now he's wanted by a lot of people. He's probably making tons of money just for the opportunities. I guarantee in the background, he's being offered major money to come to the UFC, higher than some of the people who've been there for decades, just because of his marketability. Not only can he fight, not only does he have a pedigree in wrestling, not only is he an Olympic champion, he's knocking out fighters and he seems to be explosive. Already been on Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan has already given him the stamp of approval. Everything that he needs to go anywhere he wants in this sport, no matter what sport it is when it comes to combat, right? He can go. Marketability, right? And he's good on the mic. right? He ain't talking a whole bunch of shit, but he can deliver himself on the mic, which is crucial when it comes to your marketability. Can you sell yourself to the fans? Right? Is he gonna be a good guy, heel? Who knows as this time goes on? Right? The right fight at the right time with the right guy can determine what kind of athlete he's gonna be. Because there's always gonna be an A side, always gonna be a B side. That's the name of the game. Name of the game, right? Marketability is the cornerstone of your longevity in the sport. That's why so many fighters in the UFC who are past their prime in the UFC, who has great combat skills, great wrestling background, can now go to RFA and continue their career. Are they making the same UFC money? Who knows, but they're making good enough money to show up, and it's worth it to them because RFA is growing at a high rate and they got a major broadcasting deal with Fox Nation. So, talent, and they're bringing in high-level talent, which leads to my number 3 and final person, Bo Bassett, right? I just saw a post where Bo Bassett has his own accolades of achievements. He's now entering the history books on his own as having 100 tech falls in Penn State. 100 tech falls. 100. First of all, let's put it in perspective. A tech fall is like for boxing a knockout, like MMA a submission. A tech fall means you dominate your opponent to the point where the match is over. There's no need to continue. You're so dominant, there's no need for you to continue with this thing. Because if you get tech fall in the first match, you got three rounds, and he techs you in the first round, it's over. It's like a knockout or a submission. That's what a tech fall is in wrestling. And Bo Bassett has 100 of them. What does that tell you about his level? And he's only like 19. He hasn't even turned 20 yet. Maybe 20, but I doubt it. I think he's still a teenager. And he's already a star. REF is his next playground that he's already a star in. Right? I think he's on a 2-fight win streak right now. And he's beating decent people with their own marketability that even gives him more clout in what he's doing. And then he goes right back to what he's doing in NCAAs and so on, beat up everybody, right? He just wrestled the number 2 in the sport that has almost as much accolades as him, beat him. You know what I'm saying? So what do you do? And he hasn't even gotten good on the mic yet because he's raised right. He has Christian values. He doesn't believe in trash talking, but he's a new generation of athletes where fans like him because they like him. Wrestling is a plus. He's a guy they want to follow, right? Which is the new era of currency where they're being followed because they're liked. They like the guy, who he is, what he's done. They just like him. He had nothing else to do with what he's doing. Now that's a plus that you wear RAF and you with wrestling and you've achieved so much, but they just like him. Marketability. Are you marketable in the Fightnomics area of 2026? Can you be branded? Can somebody see a reason to put money behind you, right? When you show up on an event, right? If they're not following you, what are you worth to the promotion you're with? Are you a gatekeeper? Are you a slot holder? Are you a marketable brand that you're willing to put money behind? Welcome to 2026. It's about to get interesting in these streets. There's a lot going to happen, so you're going to see me do Fightnomics more, where I talk about where the industry is going. This is my introduction to it. I just started doing my own research. I like where this is going, and yeah, this is where we're at. This is Coach D, doing what I'm doing, calling it like I see it, talking my share of shit. To hear from me again, peace out.